Hey folks, good morning. My name is Greg McLawsen. I'm the Affidavit of Support lawyer. I've spent the past 10 years representing green card holders in federal litigation to enforce the USCIS Form I-864. So, can you enforce an Affidavit of Support, a Form I-864 that your husband or wife signed? To answer that, you basically need to know the answer to two main questions. Question number one, did you acquire status as a U.S. resident, usually called a green card, based on your spouse's petition? Question number two, has your income been beneath 125% of the poverty guideline? That's roughly $1,500 per month now in 2023, or $17,000 per year. If you answer yes to both of those questions, yes, you got status based on your spouse's petition, yes, your income has been beneath $1,500 per month, then you may very well have a claim against your spouse. Let's unpack that a little bit because the details are important. So, question number one, did you acquire status through your spouse? So the Affidavit of Support, the Form I-864, has been required since 1996 in basically all family-sponsored litigation, family-sponsored immigration. You can tell where my mind is. So basically, anytime you have somebody who acquires a green card through a family member, almost always the Affidavit of Support has been signed. Now, as the green card holder, as the immigrant who acquired residential status, that person often doesn't have hands-on involvement with all of the paperwork. So if you went through the immigration process, you might not have a copy of all of the paperwork. You might not even have seen it. But we know, just because of how the law is written, that basically, unless you have a lengthy work history in the United States, if you got status through a spouse, through a husband or wife, there is a 99.9% chance that the Affidavit of Support was signed as part of that process. Why? Because the Immigration Service would not have the legal authority to approve your application and give you residential status unless the Affidavit of Support had been signed. And by the way, it's very easy for us to acquire a copy of the Affidavit of Support. We can do that from the immigration agency using something called a Freedom of Information Act request. But talking to a new potential client, I can tell right off the bat whether there's an almost 100% chance that the Affidavit of Support was signed. If that person got their legal status through a spouse, we can say with almost 100% of certainty that the Affidavit of Support was signed. So if that's you, if you have a green card, which is U.S. residential status, and you got that through a spouse, we can be almost certain, knowing nothing else, that the Affidavit of Support was signed. Now, once you acquire status as a U.S. resident, that triggers the legal obligation on the part of your spouse under the Affidavit of Support. This is called a condition precedent in contract law. Basically, what that means is that the sponsor's legal obligations under that Affidavit of Support start the moment that you get residential status. Now, what are those obligations? Well, that leads us to that second question of what your income is. Because the sponsor's obligation under the Affidavit of Support is to ensure that you have income of at least 125% of the federal poverty guideline. Now, that changes a little bit every year. It just changed now in 2023. But over the past few years, it's roughly $17,000 per year, or $1,400 to $1,500 per month. That is important because if your income has fallen beneath that level, it is the legal obligation of the sponsor to provide you with whatever financial support you need to get your income back up to that level. So, easiest case scenario is if you're unemployed. If you are unemployed, your sponsor has an obligation to provide $1,500 per month to get you up to that required level, and you can sue them if they are not meeting that obligation. Now, if you're doing some work for Uber and Lyft and you have a part-time job and maybe you're earning $500 per month, well, then the sponsor would have an obligation to bring your income up to the required level by providing the difference. So the difference between $500 and $1,500 per month, $1,000. But what is important for the purpose of assessing whether you have a potential claim is to look back, not just to the current month, but to look back to the period from when you acquired U.S. residency and say, was there a period of time since acquiring residency status where my income dropped below $1,500 per month, or on an annual basis below $17,000? If the answer to that question is yes, then you may very well have a claim against your sponsor for support. So 2 questions. Number 1, did you get residential/green card status through your spouse? Number 2, has your income dropped below $17,000 per year or $1,500 per month? If the answer to those 2 questions is yes, then you may very well have a claim under the Affidavit of Support. And I'd be happy to talk to you. We can do a Zoom consultation. I do these all across the United States. There's no cost, and we can talk about whether you have a potential claim. In terms of the additional issues, one of the primary things to think about is whether the Affidavit of Support has terminated, which is to say, has the contractual obligation that the sponsor has that obligation ended? Now, there are 5 terminating events under the Affidavit of Support, but really there are 2 primary ones to focus on. Number 1, did you become a citizen? Once you become a citizen, that terminates the obligation of the sponsor to provide support to you. Number 2 is whether you have 10 years of work history that is creditable to you. So 10 years of work history either means in your own right, so 10 years of your own work history, and it can also involve a combination of your work history and your spouse's work history. So in any sort of situation where a couple has been married for multiple years following when the foreign national acquired residency status, we want to take a close look at that person's work history and the work history of their spouse to make sure that the Affidavit of Support is still enforceable. Now, although it is not a terminating condition, the other primary thing to focus on is a person's current income. So once that person has started earning more than $1,500 per month, that's going to cut off the ability to get ongoing financial support under the affidavit. However, just because somebody's income is over the required amount now does not mean that there couldn't be a claim for prior years. So today, this is January 18th, 2023. If I have a client who earlier this month got a good job and has solid employment, maybe they're earning $3,000 per month, that is going to destroy their ability to get support under the Affidavit of Support for January 2023. But if they were unemployed or if they were underemployed the previous year, 2022, they may very well still have a claim for that year of support. And it most certainly happens. We see these cases all across the United States that somebody is underemployed for several years. So you might have a situation where you have been earning very little money for 5 years, and then you finally got a good job. Well, you might have the ability to go back and recover financial damages under the Affidavit of Support for those previous years, even though you are now in a stable period of employment. because it was your sponsor's obligation to provide financial support to you back when you were underemployed. And if they weren't doing that, you might have the legal ability to go after them now for those previous years. So that is a thumbnail sketch. I have plenty of other videos on what this looks like in terms of the landscape in federal court, where you go to enforce this. If you have questions about a potential claim under the Affidavit of Support, feel free to reach out to me on our website. We do free video consultations all across the United States. Or if you have a general question about the enforceability of the Affidavit of Support, feel free to drop them into the comments, and I will be happy to answer them there. Hope you're doing well. Happy New Year, and stay well, everyone.